yeah, you've got something cool.
Friends, Romans, and countrymen, lend me your ear. This is something we've kind of known about and heard hints of for a while. I didn't expect the press release to go live today. It just has, and this will be the talk of the town for weeks. There'll be speculation, there'll be skepticism, there will be essentially everything that the Reddit drama queens love to bring to the table without knowing much. Some of that sort of preemptively comes on the back of WESA and what the hell do they do, and implementation of leagues and teams and conflict of interest and ES Force and who's involved in what. We had the League of Legends scandal recently with Fnatic and G2 involved with Lars, and now we've got this organization, this professional. What's the official name? Professional.
PEA.
Yeah, PEA. Whatever. But it's Professional Esports Association of North American branded teams. And part of me thinks two things on this. I don't know the whole gist of what's going on behind it. The simple facts are this. It's 7 NA teams to start off, $500,000 a season, $1 million total for North American-based leagues. I won't speak too much beyond that. I know who's going to be in charge in the production of it. It's going to be excellent in that sense. And it's going to be there to rival things like E-League and ESL. And I think this is a bit of a response from North American organizations who felt slighted by WESA. I'm speculating on this, but you remember there were a number of those teams saying, oh, hold on, you're saying you've got the pedigree and you've got the numbers in the organizations you get in, but then we see the inner circle and it's ES Force, it's ESL, it's all kinds of tied strings and not a lot of the outside sources of, it's the classic CS lineups. But where's the Cloud9? Where's the TSM, et cetera, et cetera? Well, now they've done this. They've responded, and North America really has a league that is very much theirs. So I guess carry on, and I'll go through the press release.
How does this resolve with terms of they've obviously got ties with Pro League, they've got ties with ECS already. How does this fit in? Obviously, the calendar's so full already. Does it fit in the off season of these two leagues? It tries to fit around it, or are they just straight up competing, saying we're not going to be part of these next season. We'll finish off what we're currently contractually obliged to, and then we're going to focus on our own American league and do that. But presumably that doesn't really make sense, right? Because ECS and Pro League, they're global. You get to play against the European teams as well. This sounds like it's very NA focused, and it'll just be the top NA teams competing in a.
Well, this is the thing, and as a response, if you look at Europe and you look at WESA, and you would think, okay, those organizations are bound to it. There's some stability in that, regardless of conflict of interest. You would think there's going to be something there. This might create a divide where, does ESL North America suddenly lose rapport? Do they kind of dissolve? Do all the North American teams start to favor this league, and then Europe stays with this, and we get two separate leagues, and then it kind of puts. I'm not necessarily opposed to that because it takes away the saturation. We don't get a world final all the time, which is better because then we get to the majors, and it's like, whoa, hang on, continental divide.
That's true.
That could be cool if that happens. That could be very cool.
That's actually a very good point. That's kind of what we have with traditional sports, right? You don't just have. You don't have Manchester United, Real Madrid playing against each other every weekend at every single event, right? You have this build-up of their own regional leagues, and they build up and they find out who's the very best in that league. And you do it for a whole season, and then at the very end of the year, we have this one big event, like the Champions League of football, right? Let's use that as an example. That's when they finally come up and test against each other, and that's when you see the world's best team from all over the world compete, and this one truly major tournament that's going to be the undisputed champions of the world. There's one of them a year. And that could be a really interesting idea, right? So you kind of battle out in your own regions, work out who the true champions are. They go into this absolute final towards the end, and you kind of have a setup like that.
Well, that's for Valve. I think that's a dream situation. Now the majors have a new level of relevance that's apart from prize money and production. That is the World Championships.
That's the problem with CS right now. Obviously, it's an online game, so the whole of Europe can easily play against each other. Obviously, it's not the same where you can't play against online against North America, but still, we have a major event pretty much every weekend in the regular season, right? And we'll have like a big event at least. We'll have like at least a 100K tournament once or twice a week. Well, once every couple of weeks, right? And that means the NA teams are going to be flying over. They'll have a huge stint in Europe. They'll probably stay here for a couple of months, just going from event to event to event to event. And it kind of takes away that hype a little bit. Like every event feels like a stadium event now, and there's always massive amounts of prize money, same team competing. It does get a little bit stale in that respect. Right now, it's very exciting because we have all the lineup changes. It's great to see who's the best, but it's not like it's super hype every single time. It's like, oh, it's this time of year we get to see this big event. Obviously, Valve have taken out one of the majors this time. We only have two this year, which is, I guess, for me, like that kind of makes sense, right? Like we had two this year. They're both pretty sick, and then you even had another one in, and it just feels like, oh, it's another major. Like Cologne, to some extent, didn't have the same magic it did in 2015. It felt like it was still a good event. It was still exactly the same, but it's just something missing. It didn't have that same special feeling, you know?
I completely agree. And I think saturation, people say bullshit, oh, saturation doesn't exist. Fuck off. It certainly does. I think we're exhausted. The players are exhausted. And now if your team loses, great. Navi just lost this tournament. As a Navi fan, do you give a shit? Because they're going to play again in a week. It's not 2 months down the line. Oh, God, our pride was lost. Oh, I really want to see. I got to tune in to the next event. It's, whatever, fuck it. I'll see them in a week. And that's a huge problem. And not only that, people are just sick of watching in general in most cases. Or, I missed that event, whatever, there's another one. So it spreads the numbers out in that sense. And that's there's more CS and more prize money and, more job opportunity for guys like us. But for advertisers, the bigger the numbers, the better. If you spread those numbers out, it's you may think, okay, there's more advertising, but then it's just dilution for them as well. You want to hit one solid campaign that hits everyone and targets everyone. Frequency and reach are the two things they talk about in advertising. How frequently can you reach people? So obviously the frequency's gone up, but the reach has gone significantly down. And if you can combine the two, that's where you very basic idea of marketing.
So it sounds like you're quite pro for this idea of this American.
Well, okay, hang on, because I'm pro for the idea of a continental divide having a world championship that's not necessarily an official in that sense, but you get majors that get relevancy. Let me just read a few. Let's step back. Let's just talk about this Professional Esports Association at its bare bones, because we said ESL and perhaps a response to WESA, but the other league that stands in this, I don't think E-League is going to be too affected. Everyone wants the numbers. That league seems very professionally run. There's a structure involved in it. Turner's got all kinds of funding in other ways. They don't need CS. I don't think we need them, but it's one of those relationships where they're not going to bend over backwards because they need CS, right? It's going to be done right. And I think that the teams are really enjoying that. The organizations have spots. It seems fair representation. There's a qualification. That seems all fine. ECS, Facet's league. Okay? Faceit came in and said, Twitch came in and said that we're going to support this league. We're going to be on board with it. But at the same time, I wasn't convinced in all the support that they get. Now, I get what they were trying to do. It was announced a little bit late, and I think it was the right idea. They said the same thing. Players have representation on the board. So there's a players committee. The teams have a board, and they're all talking together. There's residual ownership where, league fees, there's distribution revenue, et cetera, et cetera. There's percentages in it. But it just seemed like a side league at times because of the way it was promoted. And I think NA had issues last year. There was a lot of roster changes. It wouldn't surprise me if that league also struggles because of this. And that's the third one in it. But let's look just quickly before we get to that. 2 quotes. The PEA represents something new in esports, an association of top teams running their own league and sharing profits and the decision-making with players. There you go. That's the copy of the model. That seems to be the standard right now. Let's at least put it outwardly that players have a say. Now, we know the players, after the whole coaching thing, tried to bind together and do something. If these leagues create structure, then a union can form. I talked to a sports agent very seriously about this. That quote, by the way, did come from the PEA commissioner, which is Jason Katz. I talked to a sports agent. He said, how the hell do you make a union? I said, what do you mean? Like, they just bind together. He said, how the hell do you make a union if there's no stability? A union in this league doesn't mean shit in this league, and it's different teams here than here. Who's involved in the union? Who's not? How do you enforce it when there's different rule sets? If we get some stability, a union could come to light. You're looking at something.
No, it's just the name Jason Katz. I'm pretty sure he was involved in CGS. It's just interesting to see his name coming back.
Thoughts on that?
Well, it's such a long time ago. I can't even remember what his role was, so it'd be me just speculating and trying to remember something happened 10 years ago.
I mean, I know Jason Lake's involved in this, and he was quite adamant with his tweet. As well as that, I'll bring that up and just talk about the people that are in that tweet and just identify them for people. But
it's the thing, right? Overall, right? This has literally just been announced. I'd have to look into the actual details as to what this actually means going forward. What's their standing? Like you said, it's a response to what we've seen from Pro League, E-League, ECS. Obviously, very similar model to those kind of leagues. More so towards ECS and Pro League when you get the player revenue and all that sort of stuff. For me, the biggest mistake Pro League have made, they said they're looking out for the players, but there have been a lot of instances where we've had some horrible PR moves. Obviously, we discussed that whole voting system of who's going to be in it. That's the kind of stuff that's going to get you some horrible press, right? And it just seems like there'll be some horrible press, but we'll bounce back in a couple of weeks. Everyone will forget about it and we'll move on. And I guess that can be frustrating for teams at times, and there's obviously been a lot of decisions in terms of who gets through to what. And I'm not sure. I guess at this point, this league wants to do the same thing as what these guys are doing, but they want to do it properly. They want to make sure everyone's kind of involved and kind of all on the same page. And it's not like ESL can just say, "Well, we've made this rule. We've kind of bent this rule to make it work for us." Actually, this actually won't happen in this kind of league. Every team's going to have someone on the board actually officially and kind of come together and make sure those decisions can't be made by one governing body, right? Everyone's got an input to how it should be going down. That's my understanding of this.
Right. Well, and that's the outward projection.
Yeah.
You always have to consider that. Now, I'm interested to know that Jason Katz is not a name that I'm familiar with. I'm sure there'll be people digging at it, but I'm curious as his CGS relationship. It means he's got some involvement in CS, but they also were a floor that fell out from under the scene and kind of swept the rug out from under us and killed it for a little bit. Not they intended to do so, but they changed so much. They made everyone buy into this league that failed, and it caused a lot of problems. So, I don't know the political implications there.
Okay,
but there
so he was vice president of gaming and vice president of global marketing. So yeah, that was my understanding. He was involved in like the business side of it and kind of making the decisions of how it went down. Obviously, CGS was such a shit show overall. You can't.
Well, that's the concerning factor.
I can't even speculate whether there's anything to do with him. I have no idea what that role means. But that whole thing was a complete nightmare.
Well, global marketing is the outward reach, which is at least if he has a marketing experience, he's probably not involved in the decisions internally, but learn from the mistakes. Maybe that's a good thing outwardly.
But the fact he was involved in it, he could see how it went horribly wrong, and he can bounce back and work out what's going forward. But
let's hope it's not just a cash grab for him.
He's been esports. That's another name. That's where I knew him from as well. He worked for Riot Games as esports senior management. He was like probably the guy in charge of the esports.
I'm sure Richard Lewis is turning on that one.
I think this is a name Richard likes. I'm not sure. I remember him speaking about it in the past, so I couldn't.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a video released by him in due time.
And he was chief operating officer at Azubu as well. So he's got lots of kind of experience on all these different pies and lots of different fields within esports.
And some, no, there's no question.
Obviously he probably knows what he's doing, and he seems to be at the helm of all of this. And we just had this announced. I'm sure.
From my understanding as well, that the North American teams were looking to do this, so they probably sought someone out. So it's not like this guy's at the helm and suddenly controversial. He was probably sought out by them, and it might have been a contact Jason had from CGS days or whatnot. That's another thing. Complexity is definitely trying to get into multiple situations. They got themselves into E-League quite convincingly with the organization. The boycott at the start of the year for ESL was a hint for me that this was I mean, we knew at the time that it was happening, but that was a hint maybe. That's why I brought up the ESL thing right away when they wanted – basically the ESL teams in North America held out for a day. Congratulations on your fucking boycott. You lasted a day. Good ball sack you got there, guys. But they were trying to do it to push the league to more –
What was the reason for that?
They wanted more slots in the league because of the Winter Fox issue and the organizations and teams not keeping the same positions.
Yeah.
Basically, they wanted to make sure TSM got through and – I can't remember what happened. Well, basically, the whole.
And this is when everyone starts going on Twitter and whinging about it, but not actually doing anything about it, right? So I guess this kind of league that avoids our problem. You don't have to whinge about it. It can actually be sorted behind closed doors, and everyone can have their proper input. And a decision is made as a council instead of the person the company that owns the league saying, "No, we're going to do it like this," right? And obviously, that's where they're going with this one. I'm interested to see how this works overall because so far they've got 8 teams. Are they looking to expand that? Is that
7? So
7. Okay.
So I'll come back to the other court I want to bring up in a second. Just to give you an idea who is in this picture, left, obviously, that's Zeus, former coach of LG, now playing with Immortals. We'll go bottom row. That's a little easier. We see Energy, so we know Shaq's organization and whoever else is involved with that. Yeah. Gob B, that's who's in the picture. Beside him, I'm not entirely familiar with the face, but then we see Pimp, Hayes, so Liquid, CLG. Front in the far right, that's...
So you've got listed though. You've got TSM, Cloud9, Liquid, CLG, Immortals, NRG, Complexity.
Well, that works. That works. But just to give you an idea who's in here, Jason Lake's in the back, middle. Jack Etienne from Cloud9 is second from the left in the back. I can't remember if that's Reggie's beside the Immortals owner, I think. I can't remember who's in the front. That's TSM. No, sorry, Reggie's TSM. That's Liquid's owner, I think. I can't remember his name, but that's Liquid's owner. So there you go. I mean, there's who it is. It's all those organizations which we know have good rapport amongst each other from League of Legends, and we're a little bit miffed they weren't part of WESA. I imagine that was the triggering point to start
I guess that makes sense, right? So they're kind of like responding, say, well, if you're going to have your own kind of little boys club, we'll have our own one over here in NA as well, and kind of start. The fact is they got that kind of investment, like $1 million. They're not messing around with this one. This is a serious deal, and that's kind of interesting. I mean, so you can't have a league with 7 teams. It doesn't really work. So.
Well, that's where you got to wonder. Immortals, that's not just North America now. You've got a Brazilian team involved. Interesting thing is the SK thing. They signed behind the back of Luminosity. Yeah. You would have thought with Luminosity they would have gone this route, but with SK, S-Force, they're obligated to stick with WESA. They can't really do this. So we are starting to see this organization have power battle where people are pulling themselves apart. And I think that, I'm speculating, but I think there's going to be leagues cut out from this. The first and foremost that has no ties to either of those organizations, the World Esports Association and the Professional Esports Association. I'm going to make one called Dick Waggers Esports Association just to have an esports association and be involved. But they're tied to two very specific leagues now, this North American and ESL.
Yeah.
ECS is a little bit, look, face it's done great work. They've got good rapport in the community, but they're on the outside of this right now, it would seem.
Yeah.
And I think that we are starting to go to leagues that are going to dominate. There's too much saturation. ECS is in a bit of trouble. E-League won't be. I think they're fine. They've got good structure. But I'm very curious to see where this takes us.
Well, we've got the ECS season kicking off, in a couple of weeks, actually, I think it starts. So that's interesting to see. I just want to see how this all works out. I want to see an actual statement from the players and see whether they're staying with these leagues going into next year. They're going to concentrate on this one. Obviously, like I said, they're only going to play against NA teams in this one. So obviously, they want to keep their contention within Europe as well. This is upset like leagues like ESL. How does this all work? It's just very interesting.
I think if you get stability, you're never going to get stability between every organization in the world. So if by chance, at whatever reason, look, you can get into political implications aside, if you can get some stability in Europe, if you can get some stability in North America through this, that's great. Let's get Asia on board, and then you have a world final through the former majors, and then you've got very interesting viewership. I think that would be fantastic if that works. What's underneath the surface that we're talking about, who knows? But the thing is, this is North America responding. They want equal treatment in all of this, and the organizations think that they deserve it. And you know what? Some of these guys are huge organizations. The one name, did you read Optic off that list?
No, I did not.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they get in on this somehow too.
So I guess this is like the founding partners, right? These are the people that brought it together. They're showing what they're about, and now they can probably approach more teams and say, "Look, this is what we're doing. You want to be part of it." So yeah, definitely very interested to see what comes. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of press releases. I'm sure Richard Lewis will do a video on this, and he can explain to us in true depth what's really going on. I'm sure he's got a big scoop already. But still, yeah, it's kind of interesting now. CS:GO is getting to the point where we're having all this kind of politics and drama. Like every week, it's getting to a point where it actually is getting like traditional sports in that respect. It's not just a Wild West anymore. It seems like everyone's forming together and making these organizations.
There's the quote, the Wild West. This marks the end of the Wild West days of esports, said Jack Etienne, Cloud9 CEO. Yeah. The community and players want stability and dependability. I agree. We do. We want it done right, but we do. And leagues come and go. Teams join them and depart. But with PEA, teams are making a long-term commitment to be here, playing for the fans for the indefinite future. And I agree. Look, I've said it time and time again. Riot, say what you want. And we know that there's been a lot uncovered there as of late with, can't put a fucking sponsor on your jersey. How the hell am I supposed to get money? Sorry, Darkin. Thanks for paying us for fucking nothing because we can't be on camera with your sponsor because Riot says so. What kind of dictatorship bullshit is that? But that's another story. Point is, I like the league structure. I like the stability. I'm not necessarily opposed to organizations having the spot, but there needs to be a very strict relegation format ESL to make sure that there's fairness for other teams to come in, and that way other five with another organization can get into the league instead of having to leave that organization and giving too much power in negotiating 2,000 organizations.
Yeah, that whole Virtus Pro thing, that was like horrible night. That was a nightmare of PR. But the thing is, they to give it 2 weeks, Matt, and it's all forgotten.
Well, that's the problem. We have short-term memory loss in esports, don't we?
Yeah,
we're far too forgiving. We're just fans that soak it all up. I just want to watch Counter-Strike. There's people getting fucked over in the background. We don't care.
The players obviously got some concerns, and they want to actually have this stability now. And it's a step in the right direction, I think, just in that respect. Just that everyone's going to be treated fairly now. You're not going to be told exactly what you have to do. Oh, you have to do this. You sign a contract. That's it. It seems like they've got someone protecting them, so people looking out for them, and it seems like an interesting project. I don't want to comment on it too much until I read this press release properly and kind of work out what's going on.
Every single time, and I was look, there was a lot of shit that came out right away with WESA, ESL, and then I will say there are some journalists in our scene that have beef with them, and therefore they're immediate to jump at it. So it does seem to get a little bit of a bias in that sense. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and I think that this does have potential. I think that there is some names in it. Now, Jason Lake is a guy that, yes, he's a businessman, but he's been in esports from the beginning. There's documentaries on it. He's a guy that believed in the game, all right? He made a point of branding Counter-Strike and building Counter-Strike. And if you're getting people on board like that, then it's got to be good news in a sense, right? Yeah. It's got to be the right people. And I think that there's a chance this does work out. I really hope it does. I think it is partly a response to some of the bullshit that's happened, and that's also encouraging. But grain of salt maybe in there somewhere.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a TBC going forward. We're going to see, I think in the next couple of days, we'll see more and more teams announced. I guess that's the idea. They're going to start releasing the teams as they go along and how they sign them. But still, very interesting times of CSGO. I think the next year as a whole is going to be interesting. We obviously discussed last week the whole idea of we're actually going regulated now. We're getting rid of all the bullshit stuff like skin betting and like kind of removing some of the big events as well. We only have 2 majors, so it's a troublesome time for CSGO in that respect. We're not really sure what the future holds, but stuff like this is actually quite promising to feel like there's regulation and kind of some structure going forward.
Promising, and there's one thing that Valve's not thought about. Well, they have thought about. We know they have, but they haven't done as much about. We were we were rivaling Twitch's numbers for League of Legends, not necessarily the Asian region.
Yeah.
Without Asia. We lost skins. If we can make the Asian market successful, if we can bring in these Tylus, these Vichis, these MVPs that are showing reasonable results without playing against Western teams full time, that is a massive community that resurges CS:GO in that sense. So we're not dead. You know, we're
definitely not.
Nowhere near dead. I think it's, in some senses, there's a little bit of a bubble that kind of popped. That's fine. Now we know where our real numbers are, which is also good for advertising. I talked about, you want to reach as many people as possible, but you also want to make sure you're grabbing real viewers and not just sort of the what's the word I'm looking for that they use? This
inflated
well, it's inflated, but it's transient viewers where they're just passing by, and you're in their ear and out the other side. But if you bring Asia in, you can grow. There's lots that can be done to still grow this, right? We're on a bit of a flux. I think was a good word that Semler chose, but there's lots to be done. CS is not done growing by no means.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's a very interesting time, and I'm sure our fate will be decided over this next year to see where it's going to go. And I'm actually quite excited. I think it is nice to see some regulation coming in and maybe people doing something positive instead of complaining about it. Something's been done, right? They've actually gone away and formed this new idea, this new concept, and whether it works out is yet to be seen. But it's certainly going to raise some eyebrows and actually probably force other leagues to do similar sort of moves in that respect, and we'll see whether this actually brings us all together or maybe segregates us. Who knows? We'll see how it all kind of forms.